Sorry, folks, rape culture still exists, and Donald Trump and the excuses quite a few folks are making for him are still part of it. In this video, I'm going to briefly respond to objections that some folks had to a video I recently posted titled "Donald Trump is Rape Culture." That's it, linked in the description box, and it's also right over there if you want to click there to go watch the original video if you've not seen it before we go ahead with this video. The three most common objections that I have heard to what I had to say in that video are, number one, I was comparing rape statistics to statistics of other crimes, which for one reason or another was judged to be unfair or misleading. Two, in concluding that rape is prevalent in the United States, I was not accounting for false rape accusations, and I was assuming that all reported rapes were rapes that actually occurred. And number three, I was ignoring the fact that on the Billy Bush Access Hollywood tape, Donald Trump said that the women that he forces himself on let him do it, which means that those acts were necessarily consensual. So to start with number one, the purpose of comparing the incidence of rape and sexual assault as reported in the 2014 Criminal Victimization Survey released by the Bureau of Justice Statistics, where it reported that in 2014, the most recent year for which data was available, there were 284,350 rapes or sexual assaults reported, was to establish that rape and sexual assault is far more commonplace than either drug-related death or gun-related death, both of which are routinely discussed in terms of being epidemic. If you look at the number of gun-related deaths in the year 2014 in the United States, that number was 33,599 compared to 284,350 rapes or sexual assaults reported. So there are far, far more rapes and sexual assaults that are reported every year than gun deaths. When we discuss the problem of gun violence and gun-related death in the United States, we routinely characterize it as being unacceptably commonplace, as being, dare I say it, prevalent. My purpose in comparing the number of gun-related deaths per year to the number of rapes or sexual assaults per year was to establish that rapes and sexual assaults are far more commonplace than gun-related deaths per year in the United States. And if we are to consider that gun-related deaths are at an unacceptably high level, then we must also accept that rapes and sexual assaults are so much more common than that. It should not be a remotely controversial statement to observe that in the United States, rape and sexual assault is a very prevalent crime. Another objection I've heard to the way I use statistics in that Donald Trump is rape culture video is that I cherry pick crimes that I knew were less common than rape and sexual assault, when I could just as easily have referred to crimes that are more common than rape and sexual assault. And as you can see in the very same victimization survey from 2014 from the Bureau of Justice Statistics, right below the figure for rape and sexual assault, it also reports that in 2014 there were 664,210 robberies. But some people said, well, if rape is that common and therefore we live in a rape culture, then why don't we speak about the United States as being a robbery culture? And my answer to that is, I don't know, but it's completely irrelevant to the point of that video that I made. I wasn't making a video about robbery culture. I was making a video about rape culture. But while we're on the subject, I did actually look into it, and it turns out that compared to other countries in the world, according to NationMaster.com, which allows you to compare rates of different crimes from different countries, the United States actually does have a relatively high rate of robbery compared to other nations. Not nearly as high as some other ones. You look at the number one country from 2006, which is the most recent year for which there is data on this website. Argentina's rate of robbery is way, way higher than the United States. So is the Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, Mexico. But if you look at some of the countries below the United States, here's the United States at number 10. Which is a lot worse than, say, Italy or Canada or Northern Ireland or the Netherlands or Scotland or Germany or Austria or New Zealand or Ireland, Switzerland. There are a lot of European countries, Western countries, economically and socially developed countries that the United States has a far worse rate of robbery than. So I suppose if someone wants to introduce the concept of robbery culture in an effort to call attention to the unacceptably high rates of robbery in the United States and to go about raising awareness and trying to combat that problem, I think they should go for it. I think it would be a perfectly valid concept and a wonderful thing to do, and hopefully a very productive thing to do to try and address the problem of robbery in the United States. But it's not what my Donald Trump is rape culture video was about. It's not relevant to the topic of that video, and it's not relevant to the topic of this video either, so now I'm going to stop talking about it. The second objection that I heard repeatedly in response to my Donald Trump is rape culture video is that in discussing how common rape and sexual assault are in the United States, I failed to fully account for the false accusations of rape. I was assuming that all 284,350 rapes and sexual assaults recorded in the 2014 BJS Criminal Victimization Survey had actually happened. So let's talk about false rape accusations for a moment. According to the FBI, they estimate that about 8% of rape accusations, 8% are unfounded. Now, some folks consider that 8% figure to be very high. Other folks consider it to be very low. But for my purposes in the Donald Trump is rape culture video, it doesn't matter, because rape and sexual assault are so incredibly commonplace that even if we assume against all evidence and with no real reason to do so that the incidents of rape and sexual assault are grossly inflated, it still is far more prevalent than gun death or drug-related death, as I argued in the previous video. If we take that number 284,350 and we divide it in half, which, again, there is no reason in the world to do. There is no logical, reasonable motivation for assuming that half of all reported rapes are false accusations. But even if they were, there would still be 142,175 rapes that occurred in 2014, according to the BJS Criminal Victimization Survey. The United States still satisfies, with plenty of room to spare, I would argue, the prevalence requirement in that definition of rape culture that I repeatedly quoted in that video. The third and final objection I'll be responding to in this video is the suggestion that on the Access Hollywood tape, Donald Trump is describing consensual acts because he says that the women let you do it. It is disturbing how many people have commented on that video or tweeted at me saying that because Trump says the women let him do it, by which he means kiss them or grab them by the genitals, that it must, by definition, be consensual. I mean, if it wasn't consensual, why would they let him do it? He's not describing sexual assault. He's describing consensual acts. It's disturbing how commonplace that reasoning is, but I suppose it shouldn't be surprising given how commonplace outright, blatant, unapologetic misogyny and rape apology and anti-feminism are on YouTube and the internet in general, and specifically, unfortunately, in atheist and so-called skeptical circles. No, Donald Trump is not describing consensual acts when he speaks on that Access Hollywood tape, even if the women let him do it. He is describing sexual assault. There was an article published last month on Vox titled "Consent Explained for Donald Trump," written by Emily Crockett and Liz Sheltons. It's here, and I will link it in the description box as well if you care to read it. The money quote is a bit further down, which reads, "When Trump says women let him do anything, he's not describing consensual activity. He's describing, at best, touching a woman without encountering physical resistance from her, or using his power and influence to subtly coerce her into not resisting. Coercion is not consent either, from a legal perspective or a moral one. There are a lot of reasons victims might not physically resist or even verbally object to unwanted sexual touching. They might simply have no time to react, time that Trump said he doesn't give them, quote, just kiss, I don't even wait. They might be confused or in shock. They might be afraid of physical violence, emotional abuse, or other repercussions like being fired if they don't comply. That's why brute force doesn't determine whether an attack counts as sexual assault. Unwanted and non-consensual touching does. And truthfully, I think many of those who offer this excuse for Trump are simply feigning ignorance, because if you apply this same logic to other forms of assault, it falls apart instantly. If I were to walk up to you and instead of just starting to kiss you or grope you, as Trump says he does to women all the time in that Access Hollywood tape, I were to start punching and kicking you, I could not then claim after the fact that it was consensual because you let me do it. And I know some of you might say, well, if you were punching and kicking me, then I would fight back, or I would defend myself, or I would run away. And all of those would be completely reasonable things to do. But suppose we were in a situation where you couldn't run away. Maybe I had you cornered, or maybe you were intimidated by me for some reason. Maybe you found me physically imposing. I know that's hard to imagine, but just use your imagination. Maybe I was a person of relative power and influence over you, and you feared what would happen to you if you fought me, if you raised too much of a fuss, so you just let me do it. Or maybe you chose not to run away or fight back for any one of countless other reasons. It doesn't matter. How a victim responds to being assaulted doesn't determine whether or not an assault has taken place. If I walk up to you and I just start punching and kicking you, that's assault. If I walk up to you and I just start kissing you and groping you, that's sexual assault. It's not consent if you just let me do it. It's not consent if women just let Donald Trump do it. It's assault, and that's what Donald Trump bragged about doing on that tape, and that's what more than a dozen women have come forward since that tape was released and said that he actually did to them. So to sum up, you can say that rape and sexual assault aren't prevalent in the United States, but the facts say otherwise. You can point out that other crimes are more common. It's absolutely irrelevant to the point that I was making in that video. You can insist that rape statistics are inflated by false accusations. They aren't. But even if they were grossly inflated by false accusations, rape and sexual assault would still be unacceptably common, prevalent in the United States. And you can insist until you are blue in the face that that Access Hollywood tape depicts Donald Trump describing consensual acts with women. It doesn't, and he wasn't. He was describing sexual assault. Rape culture is real. It is here in the United States. Donald Trump is the embodiment of it. And every time you make excuses for him or try to minimize the severity of rape and sexual assault or speak or act in ways that undermine the credibility of rape survivors, you are a part of it too. Hey folks, that was fun, huh? Thank you for watching. If you got something out of this one, please like, share, subscribe, and also please consider helping me to make more videos like this one by supporting this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron of this channel for as little as $1 a month. Really helps me out. Thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.